Well, here we are, folks, once again. This is the Alberti Show, coming to you directly from Pahrump, Nevada. If you've never been to Pahrump, Nevada, it's great to visit. Just don't stay here. You can come on through, drop off a few bucks, and we'll be happy to see that you get some entertainment. But there are things we should talk about that don't apply just to Pahrump and Nye County, Nevada. And with that in mind, I want to talk about our current president, Joe Biden. Now, I didn't vote for Barack Obama. I didn't vote for Joe Biden. But when we voted for when Obama ran, and I didn't vote for him, I did want to see him be successful once he got elected. I wanted him to act as though he represented everybody's interests and that things would turn out well, help bring the country together. And actually, at that time, the men's breakfast, there was about 40, 45 of us there. We all agreed what we wanted to see was a president who would represent all of us. Frankly, Obama made us a bit nervous, but we felt, let's give the guy a shot and see how well he does. Well, you know how that turned out. So when Trump got elected, the other side didn't take that attitude. Their attitude was, my God, they were screaming in the streets, people laying on the ground, screaming in New York City. It was ugly. And then you had Hillary Clinton telling everyone to resist. And what happened over the next 4 years after Trump took office, even before he took office, there was constant resistance to anything the man wanted to do. I was surprised how successful he really was. He really did a great job. So I was very impressed with what he did. And I was hoping that he would get reelected, but he didn't. I really do believe there was a lot of skullduggery going on with the elections. Just because the vote count was accurate doesn't mean that the information going into the counting machine was accurate. And that's the problem. When the different states would talk about their voting, what they said, the vote count is accurate. And I believe that to be true. What I also believe was that the amount of people voting and the way the votes were presented to be put into the machine were violations of law. I mean, even here in Nevada has a law that makes it so difficult to take somebody's name off the voter rolls. And I've talked about this at county commission meetings. I've talked about it in public. I've talked about it on my other radio shows. I've talked about it I guess I've talked about it everywhere. But it's true. They've made it very difficult to fix the voting. And even now, I have in my possession, I did a mailing. I mailed out 3,000 letters, campaign letters, and I put first-class postage on it to be sure that if it went someplace where the voter didn't exist anymore, I would get them back. Well, to my surprise, I got 750 letters back from the post office with explanations that the forwarding had expired, they don't live here anymore, they died, they moved, all sorts of things. 750 out of 3,000. Now, if you take that number and you extrapolate that number, what does extrapolate mean? It means to expand it out to the bigger numbers. There's it'll come to me here, over 36,000 registered voters in Nye County. So if you take 750 out of 3,000, that's 25% of the voters. That means that 7,500 people in Nye County were not eligible to vote. And the county clerk will tell you that the law is not so simple as just taking the post office's word for the fact or somebody writing on an envelope. they have to verify it. And I'm not going to go into that. You can call the county clerk and you can ask her how they have to verify uh, who's an eligible voter and who's still living in the county even. There was a time when dead people were still on the rolls, but I think they've kind of gotten to fixing that a bit. Anyway, when the reason I got off on that topic was that I really did hope that when Biden got elected, if he did, legally, legitimately, that he would be a good president. Although I had to say, when I saw him running for office, I did see him. Not many people have, by the way, because he was kind of like the guy, I forget, it's in Pennsylvania, where he comes out and he tucks to 20 something or other. When he comes out, if he sees a shadow, there's 6 more weeks of winter or whatever. And I was just hoping that when he came out and we saw him, that he would turn out to be a president we would like to have. But now he's in office. And I honestly have to think to myself that he is not the president. He's a picture of who the president is. But I don't think he's capable of actually managing the office of the president. I believe his mind is too far gone, so the people behind him are actually acting as president and giving him instructions as to what to say. That's why you don't see him anymore. You would see Trump every day. Every day he would talk to the news media. He was here, he was there. Never avoided them. But if you look at President Biden these days, he avoids the news media, and that's really a problem for me. I want to hear from my president. I don't want to hear from Psaki. I want to hear from him. And if I am going to hear from his press secretary, at least I'd like her to tell me the truth. When they say there's no crisis at the border, and I can see and understand what goes on there, okay, there's no crisis, but there damn sure is something drastically wrong to the crisis mentality. And I'm talking about the border because, it's not just the United States that's involved in all of this business of people coming to our country. Foreign countries are involved in this. Now, let's say you're a foreign country in Venezuela, Guatemala, Mexico, not Canada. They're not coming in from Canada. They're too smart for that. So they're coming from these other countries, and they're coming through Mexico. And the problem for Mexico, well, first, the problem from the original countries is that they're losing population when this happens. And when your population starts to diminish because of the way your country is being run by its current government, or they're financially unstable, that creates more problems. And if you're the country of Mexico and they're coming from one end of your border to the other to get to the United States, that's even more of a problem. But you know what? The people running the government today, I wish they would be honest with us as the citizens. Because when you find them lying to us, changing the words, it's not a crisis, it's a situation and we're dealing with it. Yeah, it's a crisis situation. Let's use all the proper adjectives here. So I'm looking at an article that came to me from the Las Vegas Review-Journal. I'm going to just kind of shorten what they had to say. It said the Biden administration insists that it inherited the worsening situation at the southern border, but even Mexico's head of state isn't buying it. Now, I give a lot of credit to the guy in Mexico. He's not buying what they're saying, as is anybody in this country. The Mexican president sees him as the migrant president. And so many feel they're going to reach the United States when they come through Mexico. Now, if he doesn't believe what Biden is telling us, why should we believe it? That man has to deal with those people coming through his country. He believed that Trump took the right approach and he got countries to cooperate. But Biden said, oh no, come on, hey, we'll let you in, no problem. You don't need identification, don't need a medical exam, just come. Send your children. We want the children because we have pedophiles here. We just had one kill themselves in New York in jail. Well, I think they actually killed him, but so he looks at this as a fiasco. And when you hear the border states like Texas and California and New Mexico, places like that, you got to think something wrong here. So I have a suggestion on what Joe Biden might want to think about doing. I think we should rearrange the borders of the United States. Because what happens if you're a border on the outskirts, the outlying perimeter of the United States, your state gets stuck with having to deal with the immigrant population. Now, I have no issue with immigrants. My grandfather was an immigrant, so was my mother. So I don't have a problem with that. They came here legitimately. And there are ways to do it. As a matter of fact, the way they're letting people in now and giving amnesty to those who came here, snuck across the border and hid until they got established, the way they're doing that is a total disservice to those who came here under legitimate circumstances. We have friends that spend thousands and thousands of dollars dealing with the immigration service just so they could bring their family here with them. So here's my suggestion. I think we should rearrange the perimeter of the United States. And that perimeter should be 100 yards. That's 300 feet in every state in the outskirts of the border. That would become federal property that the federal government can control. Then there's no argument with the states. That's federal property. The federal government would handle it. And maybe it doesn't have to be 300 feet. Maybe it could be 100 or 200. It doesn't matter to me. But some number, some reasonable small number. And then the state border would be the 300 feet inside the federal border. Now, when you do that, now the state has full control over their border because the feds don't control that one. They control the other one. So if people came across the border and your state wanted a fence, they could put it up. If they wanted to have a policy about how immigrants came into their state, they could have it. I do not believe the federal government can mandate to a state that they have to take certain people. There's another issue that I think comes along with this. There's got to be a good reason, and I don't think it's a humanitarian reason that they want to let so many people come across the border. If you look at the statistical numbers of the amount of abortions in this country, we're basically decimating our population that's here already. The Social Security system was designed and built on population growth. It's kind of like a Ponzi scheme with a little modification. And it relies on having enough people in the population growth to support those who retire. And now we're all living longer. I mean, I'm 80 years old. So what do you do when you're murdering 1 million babies? That's your future population. Out of one baby comes 2, 3, maybe 4 people. When they're killed off through abortion, that Social Security program don't work right, especially when people are living so much longer. Today, people in the age of 75 and 80 can do what people did at 55. Well, maybe not everybody, but a lot of us. And you see more people living to be 100 in their 90s. So this is a problem. So how do you fix that problem? You decide that you need to get more people in here to replace those you've murdered as children. And how do you do that? You open the borders and let them come through, lickety split. As many as want to come in here, just come on in, folks. The water's fine. But it isn't fine. That's not the way you handle immigration. And this all started many years ago when immigrants who came here, the Democrats argued that every language had to be represented on the ballot. How could you have a ballot with so many languages? If you're Filipino, you could call and get that language. If you're Polish, you could get that language. If you're Russian, you could get that language. But language do not translate directly, exactly. That's a real problem. But when everybody understands the same language, that is a solution. That doesn't mean you don't have to know another language, but it's best if everybody speaks the same tongue. But how can that happen when people come across the border and they have to hide because they're here? And they don't learn this language. They only learn the language they had when they left home. You know, as a real estate broker, I was told when I did real estate in California that there were certain, I remember when this started, I was told there were certain words you can't use. For instance, you couldn't use the word in an advertisement, master bedroom. That had bad connotations. And they had a whole list. And if somebody used that word and they got reported or some other words that they had in the list, technically you had to learn a new language. You had to restrict your ability to communicate what you were showing. Well, and then it gravitated from that. Now they started to change the language. Now they're actually changing the way you think. Everything is racist. I don't think Joe Biden is a horrible guy. I don't think he's the best man for the presidency, but I'm not going to say he's a horrible man. But when I look at today is the day that he had a news conference. He still hasn't had a State of the Union address. Probably never will in 4 years if he lasts that long. But I watched his address today, and it was pablum. It was being fed. He had the answers in front of him. The questions were already decided and who he was going to call on. Give me a break here, folks. You're being manipulated. And don't forget, when you get manipulated, you will wear a mask. You will maintain a 6-foot distance. You will not have any guests at your home. Be careful when you go outside. Always wash your hands, blow your nose, brush your teeth. You have to sleep 8 hours a day. Come on, folks. As Joe Biden would say, come on, man, give me a break. So the Mexican president, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, said 2 weeks ago that so many people feel they're going to reach the United States. That's why they're coming here. And they're coming here because they believe Joe Biden said, come on, the deal is changed. There's no more President Trump. There's now Obama, and we want you to come here. We love you. Well, Trump didn't hate anybody. He just wanted to have an orderly immigration policy. And it isn't just people coming here. All of a sudden now, there's more drugs coming across the border. Do you know what it's like when somebody is a drug addict? Let me tell you what it's like. And I'm not going to talk about the damage to the druggie. I want to talk to the families. The families know there's something wrong, but they can't do anything about it other than want to help the very person that's got the problem. And some people have addicted for almost all their life. And those drugs are coming across the border. And Trump was attacking that problem. I wonder sometimes, I always ask myself, How do I follow the money on the drugs? Why is it our government? You know, we've got a war on drugs. I don't know what Biden's going to do about that. Maybe smoke a joint once in a while. I don't think he smokes a joint. I just shouldn't have said that, but I did. Now it's in your head; it'll never go away. Anyway, I think that we really need to pay attention to the amount of drugs in this country. People don't realize when they start with drugs what it does to them. And some people can really function well when they're on drugs. And the drug could be alcohol, could be cigarettes, could be fentanyl, could be almost, I don't know. I don't know a lot about drugs. I never took them. Matter of fact, I quit smoking when I was 21. Started when I was 5 years old. Lived in Queens, New York. And my friends and I always saw the adults smoking, and we thought, wow, that's for us. So we'd walk along the curb. Yeah, I mean, you couldn't steal your parents' cigarettes. That wasn't nice. We were told that. So we would pick up cigarette butts from the gutter. And we would go down by the railroad track, the Long Island Railroad tracks. And we would smoke cigarettes. And if we didn't get cigarettes, they had weeds that grew down there that were hollow. And we would light those up and smoke those. So since I was 5, I smoked. And I quit when I was 21. Not because I wanted to, but because it was affecting me. So I was the fortunate one. And I never had any other drugs. But I've watched people that have had them. You watch somebody on meth, you can't believe people who have been on meth actually have dreams about it long after they've gotten off the drug. Dreams about what it's like. And sometimes they wake up and it feels like they had it. And these are coming across the border. But Trump doing what he did was slowing that down so the border control had better enforcement of what was happening. I mean, they'd find it in trunks and cars and people's bodies. It was everywhere. That's how important it is for the druggies outside this country that sell it to try and bring it in. A lot of money involved there. Now, why do I mention all of this? Who's getting money here? I don't think it's the average guy in the street. I think the very politicians that complain about the drugs are getting money funneled into their bank accounts or their relatives somewhere. And so they don't have a vested interest in fixing this. God hope that it does get fixed someday. But right now, that's a real problem. And I think this president in Mexico, looking at Joe Biden and what he's doing, he sees all of this. I don't know why other people can't look at these issues the way I look at it. I could be wrong. That would be a first. Well, not really, but close to it. So what are they going to do? Biden wouldn't even let, and his people wouldn't even let the press in to look at the conditions that these people were in. Before, first they were in cages with Obama. Then they were in cages with Trump that he inherited from Obama. And then the Biden people said, we can't have these cages. So they got rid of them and they put up plastic sheeting. What's the difference between a plastic sheeting and a cage? I'll tell you the difference. The cages were chain link fencing where you had ventilation. You had air circulation. When you put up plastic sheeting, I don't think there's a lot of ventilation in that room. And then we had one of these politicians that went down to the area where immigrants were being held, and she claimed she was drinking from the toilet. That lion, yes, that politician was a liar, and I believe that was Cortez. She claimed they were drinking from the toilets. And I had a conversation with somebody who had been in prison, and I asked him about that. Do you really believe they're drinking from the toilets? And what he told me was that the toilets in the prison have the toilet seat, and they have the tank behind it and there's a water fountain on top of the tank. So what they really are probably drinking from is the water fountain above the toilet. It's all one unit stainless steel. Now, I'm not an authority on that, and I'll agree that maybe I need to have my head examined even believing it, but I think it's true. I've seen a picture of what it looks like anyway. I've never been in prison, so I can't speak for it. But if you know somebody that's been in prison, they probably could tell you. By the way, I was going to give out the phone number here. 775. Oh, go get a pencil already. This is that kind of show. This is a call-in show, unless I keep talking. So the number here is 775-990-4900. So I think when in looking at this whole border issue, we need to do some real hard thinking here. I have a lot of empathy for the people that have to enforce the rules at the border. And when the Biden people came in, they changed all the rules. They don't have enough people staffing the place. They didn't have enough room to put people. And they knew damn well that there was going to be a rush to border because they were told it was coming. Now, if you're a voter and you lack the intelligence to understand what's going on because you have empathy, you better have some empathy for your own country. Your country first, not somebody else's country. And I also believe that there's all this talk about the one world order. Let's talk about that just for a minute. I can remember when I lived back east, there was talk of the one world order. This was in the 60s. And they were talking about businesses, large corporations, and the fact that they were advocating a broader government spectrum so that they didn't have to deal with all this money exchanging between countries when they ship products and other issues. So when people say their government is pushing this, I really believe it's the companies that have to deal with the money issues that's really pushing it. And guess who gives money to all the politicians? The big companies that have it. Whose money are they giving? Your money. And when a politician comes to you and says they want money, I'm just not sure how to deal with that. I honestly don't. My brain goes into a fog because I don't want to give them money, but I don't want them to do for somebody else that gives them the money. You know, a career politician has one thing in mind, his career in politics. And they told you that they voted for term limits. Now, I know what a sucker, P.T. Barnum said, there's one born every minute. That's you. And I think that the owner of this station probably knows one, and it isn't me. So there we go. Anyway, if you believe
what do you mean? I'm looking at him.
Who's that? Did you hear that?
That's you.
Is that God?
No, that's Sasquatch.
Well,
okay,
folks,
it went over your head.
Yeah, no, it didn't go over my head. I just didn't want to hear it. Well, I have to say, I want to compliment Mr. Producer. It's the first time he's gotten on the microphone to express his opinion rather than just letting me hear it. Okay, so now I don't know where I was. Oh, yeah, I'm here in the studio. Yeah. I'm doing better than Biden. Anyway, yeah, I really don't know where I was. I got taken off I don't have notes on the table. Everything I do is off the top of my head. It probably sounds like it. I can't help that. But the whole thing that I think needs to be done is we need to scrap everything and not get a new constitution, but stop the lawyers from interpreting the meaning of the Constitution and just giving us a direct reading. You know, there's a book, The Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers. And if you read that, it's not an easy read, but you could read it, Oh, I'm giving a signal that I got to take a break. That's probably a good thing because I'm on a roll. So we're going to take a break. And once again, the phone number is 775-990-4900. I'm taking a break.